So hey guys, I know it's been a while since I've done a vlog, but the reason for that in part is because I've been working on producing a lot of scripted content. So, that tends to take a little while longer. Plus, I've sort of been focusing on where my inspiration is at the moment, which right now is a lot of the little some bits and details of terms and organizations in my world. So I'm kind of doing a lot of videos to describe who these groups are, what these items are in terms of things you will encounter in the course of my various universes, and in addition to providing what I hope sounds like a official sounding, educational films, for lack of a better term, for some of the things I'm working on. I hope it also interests people who would come across these videos to be like, I'd like to see what story this is from. I don't know if it'll make a difference, but I'm having fun doing them, so that's really all that matters. In terms of how things are going, I am doing all right with writing. I have run into, I guess, a couple of slow points because I'm kind of uh, working on some ideas. Like I had a lot of ideas that I had worked out, and then at some point it kind of, I'm not sure whether I either came up, well, in some cases I came up with a better idea. In some cases I wasn't really happy with what I had once I started getting to the point where I was writing that part of the story and a few other things. And it's kind of resulted in some ideas that were complete not being complete at the moment. And some ideas that really didn't get that far off the ground had never really solidified 100%. So I'm kind of working on a couple of those ideas now to sort of at least get a framework for everything that I'm working on, so that even if I don't have a solid plan for every piece of it, that I have a general skeleton, that I have it broken down into a couple of different pieces. Because at some point I'll get around to doing some writing videos on how I structure the larger projects, and particularly, at least for me, it's helped to try this different approach because everybody knows about three act structure: beginning, middle, and end. I found something that, at least for me, works better, which is four act structure, and basically it breaks the story into four roughly even chunks. Now, of course, obviously they don't have to be the same length of terms of word count, but they have to be, they have certain jobs to fulfill. And rather than trying to picture this nebulous concept of the entirety of a novel in your mind at the same time, you can just sort of break down what has to happen in this section, what has to happen in the next section, and so on and so forth. And it kind of makes it a little bit easier to sort of concentrate on one section at a time, in addition to making it seem a little less daunting as an overall project. Because I mean, if I'm sure I'm not the only person, creatively speaking, who has experienced this, but sometimes when faced with big things, it gets a little overwhelming, and then you tend to start, or at least I tend to start thinking things like the worst case scenario, or does this still make sense based on what I wrote yesterday, things like that. And so I've been kind of thinking about trying to work in a day for like brainstorming, or I don't know, maybe a session a day. I don't know. I'm still tweaking my process, but things are going well. I am I'm getting close to the point where I feel like I can be comfortably announcing some projects that are either being worked on, that are close to completion, or various other stages in development. It's still my hope that I can at least refresh my memory on how to self-publish, because it's been a while, and part avoidance, part other things. I don't really remember a lot of the steps, but I have most of the elements I think I should need in order to be able to put at least a couple of things together within the next 6 months, and hopefully it'll all go smoothly. And I'm trying to be as prepared for any hurdles or obstacles that I might come across. But suffice it to say that, at least for now, I am comfortable to the degree that I feel like I can say that I can more or less guarantee that some of these things, at least some of these things, are for sure going to happen within a reasonable time frame. Now, as far as some of the other things, I mean, I still have the intention of trying to complete all these things, but through a combination of factors, it kind of was like kind of like when you're cleaning up somebody else's mess. Of course, in this case, this somebody else is me, but I'm trying to sort of sort out both the quirks of how my brain works and also the bits and pieces of what I have, the stories that I want to be sure that I tell before anything uh, prevents me from doing that. And it's a lot of pushing and pulling, and trying to see how all this stuff comes together. Now, in terms of switching over my legal information, I did get the court order back. I don't know if I talked about that in my last video, and that is good. So I have several copies of that from the court. I have begun the process, I think, to update my social security card, which I apparently right now they're not seeing people in person, so I had to send it through the mail, which doesn't really fill me with confidence. But that's mostly just because I don't like having some of these documents out of my hands any longer than I have to. And they were telling me over the phone when I called that they were not doing in-person appointments for anybody other than somebody who was getting a social security card for the first time. Since that is obviously not me, I have to do it through the mail. Now, of course, I generally have more faith in the postal service than some, but it's still just nerve-wracking just because you don't have them in your hands. So, fingers crossed, hopefully it'll be a relatively quick turnaround time, because basically a lot of this stuff is sequential steps. It's not so much that it's difficult. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of pieces, and basically until you get one step completed, you can't move on to the next. So, if you've never done this before, and I know that there's a couple people in my circle who have been through this process, and of course, different states have different procedures. But so far in Texas, I've had to get a court order, which required filling out some paperwork and testifying via teleconference with a judge. And then I have to get Social Security updated, which then means I can go to the Department of Public Safety and get my license updated. And then after that, I can go visit the bank and get all my bank accounts updated. And then from there, I just more or less kind of work my way down the list for whatever I think needs to be notified. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I'm not really sure of, because some of the stuff, like my Starbucks account, for my on my phone, I have it listed so that it prints out as Lauren, but I don't know if they need to know that, or I don't know if they need any kind of update for that, because I mean the money comes through a gift card. But like things like Amazon.com, I mean, right now I know that the website greets me as Lauren, but I think in terms of like payments and stuff like that, that they still have a lot of my old legal name on there. So if you've had some experience with this, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And from what I've heard from speaking to a couple of other folks, is that these are long processes, and that they take a while, and they'll understandably take a good amount of time before all of this stuff boils through. And I guess for the most part, October is hopefully. Oh wait, October is not October. November is when I hopefully plan to kick into, I guess, more of a formal gear. I guess. I unfortunately failed to schedule video content for this week, just because I was gonna do it Sunday night, but then I just got lazy and I didn't schedule it, and then it just kind of was like, well, I blew the first day, so. And I know I probably shouldn't do that, and that's why I have these scheduling apps. But at least for now, anyway, you'll kind of have to bear with me, because finding time to post things is perhaps one of my continual failings, or at least one of the more difficult parts, just because I mean, it's definitely easier when I can schedule these things. So, the last thing that I guess I want to mention real quick is that I'm still getting a couple of things in from when I had ordered stuff online, particularly from Square, because a lot of this stuff, I guess, was pre-orders, and it took a while. But we recently got in, they call them the polygon figures, and here's a good picture of them. And it's like, if you can see these ones here, this is Cloud and Eris, two of the main characters from Final Fantasy VII. I still have kind of mixed feelings about the remake because, as much as I like the added content and the higher detail for some of the characters, to some degree, I kind of wish they hadn't messed with some parts of the story, because, at least right now anyway, it's hard to tell because it's an incomplete picture. I know that the FF7 remake is going to take multiple pieces, but I'm not sure how some of this stuff is going to translate, and there's no way to know until they produce the other two pieces. But at least in terms of me, like the little polygon figurines like this one here, it just kind of reminds me that, this was how I knew the characters for the most part in 1997 when Final Fantasy VII originally came out. And you spent a lot of time seeing them walk around the screens exactly like this. And for a few reasons, I kind of like these little figurines a little bit more than the high detail ones, just because they kind of remind me a little bit, not quite of my childhood, but of the first real experience I ever had with video games, with role playing games of any significant scale, and particularly with the world of Final Fantasy and the technological magical hybrid. And I know some people like the fantasy take on the universe a little bit more, but I always liked the magic technical hybrids like 7, 8, 13. I like the technology. But, there's nothing wrong with either approach. It's nice that they, kind of go back and forth between them. But for me, it's definitely always been like 7 and 13 have been my all time favorites. And that's it for now, so I guess I will talk to you guys soon.
Thanks for watching, and if you liked it, click the subscribe button and leave a comment below. You can also find me on Twitter and a few other places on the web, or support me via Patreon or Ko-fi. Zebra hugs!